Are you looking to grow revenues, increase profitability, or obtain financing? If so, you came to the right place.
Running a business is all about leadership. How do you become a better leader? Learn from the successful entrepreneurs and business owners how to lead your organization more effectively. That's why we created Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business, to help you succeed with your host, Andrew Frazier, Business Growth Pro and CFO and founder of the Small Business Pro University. Every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're joined by experienced entrepreneurs and business owners who share their secrets to success via live stream. Also, every Friday morning, we release a new podcast episode. Either way, you will learn about developing your business leadership skills from our roster of highly performing guest experts. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.u.com.
Good evening and welcome back to Leadership Live at 8:05 Talking Small Business. I'm your host, Andrew Frazier, and really looking forward to digging into our topic tonight. We've got a great guest who has tremendous experience helping entrepreneurs and business owners be able to be more profitable. Watch out for things that are a drain on profitability and just understand some strategies and some ways to grow. So definitely looking forward to it. As you saw, but the topic is stop leaving money on the table. Definitely something that we don't want to do any more of that than we have to. So definitely looking forward to that. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Definitely feel free to ask questions as we go. We like to make it interactive. Post your comments and let's have a great show. So let me invite Phil Woolfolk on to talk a little bit. Hey, Phil, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So I'm excited about having you. We've known each other for many years,
right?
Through many different roles and responsibilities.
Right.
But you've always been doing great things.
Thank you.
And really contributing to the community as well as to your own entrepreneurial efforts, which has been great. Through all the things that you've done, you've had some great experience. So that's why I wanted to chat with you about this tonight.
Very good. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. So before we get started, I know who you are, but not everybody on the show does.
Sure.
Why don't you take a few minutes to sort of walk through your through your journey, and let's go from there, and then we can start with Q&A and the topics. But it's always nice to have your journey. Hey, Monique. Hey, Andrea. Thanks for joining. So go ahead.
Okay, great. So as you know, Andrew, I started my career out in banking, but one of the things you may not know that I do share from time to time is I started out in banking at the age of probably 8 or 9. And to explain that, I'll simply share that, I used to save money in a can. And when my parents' friends needed to borrow money between paydays, they would borrow it from me. So if I lent you $10 on payday, you had to pay me back 15. So that was my early stage introduction to banking. And later years, I started my career as a teller, eventually working my way through some various positions that led me into residential mortgage lending, where I managed sales and operations for a few years for lower moderate income lending, helping lower moderate income folks become homeowners. Did some commercial lending, small business lending, SBA lending, and a number of other things in that environment. Also, once I got to a later stage in my career, I ended up as a vice president and fair lending manager for fair lending compliance, and I left banking in 2002. And during that time, I was also serving as chair of the board of trustees for a charter school. I ended up transitioning from that position to becoming the chief administrative officer for the charter school. Held that position until the end of 2003, the school year ending in 2003. And then from 2003 to 2008, I had the opportunity to be a stay-at-home dad. I had happened to be in Pentagon City on September 11th, 2001, when the terrorists attacked the country, and I made a decision that I wanted to spend more time with my girls. Took that opportunity from 2003 to 2008, roughly, and basically spent a lot of time camping and golfing and traveling and hanging out with my daughters. And so that was a great time for me. I ended up going back into financial services, took a smaller position at a credit union, and that was in 2008. Was able to utilize my banking and lending background to do some troubled debt restructure. As you know, during 2008, it was a downturn in the economy. A lot of folks were losing their jobs and, losing their real estate, their homes and whatnot. So I was able to work with the credit union to help support the idea of troubled debt restructuring debt to help folks maintain ownership of their homes, their cars, their businesses. And that's what I did through probably from 2008 to 2014. I was there. Started a consulting practice, which was Main Street Advisory LLC in 2015. And from 2015 to 2020 or 2019, I guess 15 to 19, when the pandemic struck, I ended up, because I was already a board member and the treasurer for the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey, started doing some work with the chamber. The chamber was asked to provide services for the small business community through the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. We started off that journey providing economic injury disaster loans, later the SBA Paycheck Protection Program loans, helped a lot of businesses across the state, maintain their businesses and stay in business. And that led to us developing the Equitable Small Business Initiative, which allowed us to expand our capacity to make loans. We did that in partnership with New Jersey Community Capital, which is one of the larger community development financial institutions in the state. And that partnership allowed us to really help a lot of businesses with expansion capital and also emergency funding in terms of what they might have needed to stay in business, pay their employees, and kind of keep the lights on. That has led to kind of the present moment where we're basically working toward application to become a community development institution, financial institution ourselves, working along with a number of partners. We have 35 to 40 banks or so that are members of the chamber. We have an excellent board and good guidance. And of course, John Harmon, our founder, president, and CEO. So working all together to make that happen. We expect that sometime this fall that we may be able to actually submit a formal application. So we're working right now on infrastructure and building out our ability to be able to do that. We were able to raise about $4.4 million to get that started with the Equitable Small Business Initiative. We've probably closed about 25 or so loans, totaling maybe around 2.5 million or so. And so we're now in transition to formally position ourselves to become a community development financial institution. So that's my formal role right now with the chamber is that of Chief Operations Officer. I've held that position now since 2021. In addition to that, I've also been somewhat of a serial entrepreneur most of my life. Been a real estate investor now for about 40 years. Also do some speaking and have some other things that I do economically. Serve on a number of boards, most of them nonprofit boards. Serve on a for-profit board for an organization where the founder of that organization is a multi-organ transplant surgeon. He's also an inventor and created surgical devices that make use of plasma technology to coagulate the blood in vessels during a surgical procedure, reducing the need for blood transfusions, minimizing blood loss, and also improving on the healing time of the patient. So I have a number of things going on that I'm involved with, and working with the small business community certainly has been a large part of that through my work with the chamber.
Okay, excellent. So, I mean, you're like a real Renaissance man, doing a little bit of everything.
That's true.
Interesting. You started out as a banker at 8 or 9. I probably started out as I had my first business in 4th grade, a paper route.
Okay, all right.
And we grew it into a snow shoveling business as well with our friends.
I certainly did a little bit of that as well, Andrew.
Because I, ended up, making some money and had extra money. I was sort of a banker too, but probably much worse banker. Given that I lent money to my parents at times, and they're like, we're your parents. So you can't really collect on them when you want to. But, it's all good.
If you press too hard on that, you can end up homeless.
Right. So, you learn your lessons along the way, but it's all good. Right. So, so definitely in all your different roles as a business owner, as advisor to business owners, as an employee, you've been involved with small business in so many different ways. So
right.
You've seen a lot of different things. So that's why I'm really excited about chatting with you tonight. I think there's a few areas where people tend to leave money on the table.
Oh, for sure.
And, one of them is pricing. Another of them is, margins.
Right.
Also, on the insurance side,
right.
There's different ways that you may be leaving money on the table, and
for sure.
You have a unique perspective on that, especially since you've been in public adjusting and have a lot of experience in that industry, and a whole lot of others. So there's a lot of things for us to cover tonight. So
for sure,
going to go a lot.
Yeah.
Before we do that, before we dive in, I want to just share what the Small Business Pro University is all about. We do all our programming through the Small Business University, so you should know what it is. So we'll take 60 seconds to do that,
sure.
And then we'll be back with Phil talking small business.
Do you own your business, or does it own you? Is your business growing, and are you making enough money? As a business owner, there are so many things you need to know to become more successful. Hello. My name is Andrew Frazier, the Business Growth Pro and CFO. I created the Small Business Pro University for you. Small Business Pro University has self-paced, dynamic, multimedia learning experiences created by more than 20 instructors who are business owners just like you. Small Business Pro University will empower you to become a masterpreneur by learning the secrets to creating a successful enterprise, to go from working in your business to working on your business. Take advantage of our strategic coaching program, or just simply choose the courses that you need. At www.sbprou.com, we will empower you to thrive and not just survive, and make more money in any business environment.
Good evening. I'm here with Phil Woolfolk, and we're talking small business, and we're going to just focus on how to stop leaving money on the table. One of the biggest ways small business owners do that is in their pricing. Definitely, I find that most small business owners underprice, but pricing can be kind of confusing. Usually when they say, how much should you price? The answer is whatever the market will bear. So what does that mean? And how do you figure that out? So, when you're helping people with pricing or pricing your own stuff, what are some guidelines?
Oh, sure. Well, I think one of the big things that I run into with a number of small businesses, and this happens quite a bit. I'll use the construction business or construction industry as an example. So we have a number of folks that are in that business. Sometimes they're trying to get their foot in the door in terms of their growth. They may be working as subcontractors with some of the larger companies, and they take a position that they should price at a lower price point so they can get their foot in the door. Unfortunately, what happens with that is that when you start looking at the time investment and all of what you're doing for that contract, you find that you're underwater with regard to profitability. And perhaps it gets your foot in the door, but unfortunately it may get your foot in the door as being someone that is pricing in that manner. And so when you go back for a repeat business or renewal of the contract or the next contract, you may find yourself in a situation where now your actual pricing is not acceptable because you've underpriced yourself to the point where folks begin to expect that that's what the price is going to be. So it becomes very difficult for folks. So you know when you're in business, you have to be willing to walk away. You have a price, and there's a price that makes sense for you and is profitable for your company. And if you start negotiating against yourself, you put yourself in a situation where sometimes you have to, quite frankly, sit down and kind of calculate, you know, would I be making more money as an employee, or am I going to be able to build some equity and some real wealth with this company that I'm trying to develop? And I think sometimes you're trying to get your foot in the door, you underprice yourself, and you're certainly leaving money on the table that way. I think that happens in the construction business, also happens in retail, where people are selling certain goods and services. They're not really 100% sure of their true cost. And so they end up finding out later that it wasn't profitable to sell at that price point. And it could jeopardize your ability to stay in business when your pricing is off. So, you know, people have to do a much better job, a lot more research, and just be very comfortable with the price that they put out. And I think the other thing that folks have to do is be comfortable with your own value proposition. So whatever it is you're doing, whether it's you're providing a service or you're providing a product, you have to have some comfort level that you come with that service or product. And because of that, there's some value there that might not be the same with others. So you might be pricing something a little bit higher, and you have to sell folks on the idea that it's that price point because you come along with the deal, and that's your price. And people can make a decision whether or not they're comfortable with that or not. But I think you have to be sold on your price before you can sell someone else on your price. And if you start negotiating against yourself and accepting something less than that, you know, you'll find yourself working for less than you're worth. No different than being in corporate America and commanding a certain price and taking less than that. And you find that over the course of your career, your earnings will be much less because you were not willing to do whatever it is you needed to do, whether that means leaving the company and going somewhere else. You know, I worked a lot of years with some folks who had a lot of complaining to do about the company. But when I asked, well, what are you going to do about it? You know, some of them retired from those same companies. And I know when I started moving around, you know, my compensation changed. And once you get to a certain value point, people respect the fact that you're producing at that level, and you get paid better for that. But if you stick around and complain for 20 years, you'll find that your compensation doesn't represent what your true value might be. But that's something we have control over because it's a free market society, right? So,
Okay.
you know,
So,
you're not getting the price that you want. You should be making some changes to that.
right. I mean, definitely you want to get what you're worth.
Right.
You know, sometimes in business you do have to compromise a little bit when you're starting out.
Right.
But you know, only to gain experience or relationships or whatever.
Right.
But it's important to know your value.
Oh, for sure.
Ask for your value, because a lot of people don't even ask for their value.
Oh,
because,
yeah.
said
Yeah.
they're not confident in their value proposition.
Right.
You know, the other side is a lot of times they're not even talking to the right people. The
For
people
sure.
that
Yeah.
value what they do the most. So,
Right.
it's a combination. So, underpricing is key, but even if you think you may be pricing because you're looking at what the market price is, it's not just about what the price is. What's even more important many times is the margins.
Right.
So, can you talk a little bit about what margins are and why it's so important to profitability?
Oh, absolutely. So when you think about margins, you're thinking about really what does it actually cost you to produce whatever it is you produce? What is it? What is your true cost? And once you know what your true cost is, you can kind of compare how you're pricing that and make a determination. Is that profitable? Is that enough profit for you to make a go of it with regard to whatever the business is that you're involved in? Sometimes people start businesses, they just price based on what the competition is pricing at, but you don't know what the competition is paying and what their cost of goods are. You don't know what their margins are. So if you're competing with a business that just happens to have a resource where they're able to get a better price point for their raw goods, and then all of a sudden you're pricing the same as them, and the cost of your raw goods are higher, then that company can continue to price at that lower price point because they're getting a better price on their raw materials. If you're not if your pricing doesn't compare in terms of what you're paying for your cost of goods sold, then you're going to be underwater, and that's not a good recipe for longevity.
So, no, definitely. You can't price the same as others, especially your larger competitors. Um, you should have a different value proposition. As a small business owner, you can be more flexible, more creative, more proactive than
Right.
larger companies. So you can use that to your advantage,
Oh, for sure.
but not just doing that, you can charge for that, and you should
Right.
charge for that because
Right.
you're adding more value.
Right.
Many times as a small business, you should probably be charging more than your competitors.
Mhm.
Not exorbitantly more, but to keep the same margins, you have to charge more many times because your cost structure
Oh,
is
sure, absolutely. And there are folks out there who will pay that higher price depending on the level of service, and depending on what else are you adding in terms of your overall value proposition. So people aren't going to pay more just because it's they think it's a nice thing to do, or they think you're a nice guy. When it comes right down to it, if you're providing some sort of service and you're able to deliver, and you have more flexibility, more ability to pivot, more ability to just respond maybe quicker than sometimes a larger company can, because they have to go through a process of dealing with whoever the decision makers are. In your case, if you're either the owner and you're making decisions yourself, or you're the owner and you've delegated authority and allow folks that are your boots on the ground for your business to make the best decisions that they can based on information that they have, you'll find that you'll be able to deliver better sometimes than some of the larger companies if you have that sort of philosophy of being able to deliver.
okay, cool. And the other side is it's not just the margins, like your cost margin, understanding your cost to deliver your products and services,
Right.
but you've also got to understand your overhead situation
Absolutely.
because you got to get to scale and understand what scale is and price that into what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about overhead,
Oh, sure.
about economies of scale, and why they're so important?
Oh, absolutely. Well, one of the things when you talk about economies of scale, Andrew, and you talked about it just briefly in your intro, when you're a sole proprietor or a single member LLC or a small corporation, and you're, what I call the vice president of everything, you're really focused 100% of your time working in the business and very little time focused on working on the business. And so because of that, you end up limiting yourself in terms of your overall capacity and your ability to really make more money in terms of generating more revenue. So if you happen to be someone that's really good in sales or business development, client acquisition, but you're spending a lot of your time on the administrative task of your business that could be done by someone in an administrative role, then you're basically taking away from the revenue possibilities for your business, because you're hampering your ability to generate more revenue. Because if that's what you're good at, you're not able to do that while you're doing administrative or other repetitive tasks that could be done by someone else. So, your ability to scale is hampered. Your ability to generate more revenue is hampered. It's becomes a problem over long term, because you can't scale up really by yourself, and you reach a certain ceiling in terms of your revenue as a small business, and it's difficult to grow beyond that without help.
Okay. So yeah, so definitely, economies of scale, being able to cover your overhead.
Right.
And the only way you can cover that more is by growing. That's
Right.
why it's so important for businesses to grow. So it's
Right.
not just to stay where you are, you've got to grow.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And economies of scale, the other piece of it is, as you grow, every dollar of sales is more profitable.
Right.
Because your overhead shouldn't be growing
Right.
at the same rate. So
Right.
so that's always really important.
Oh, absolutely. And I talked to a number of businesses too, Andrew, on the other side of this, who sometimes the owner might not be the best person as it relates to client acquisition or business development. Sometimes they may be the best technical person to provide some of what the business needs in order to operate and function properly. So sometimes a business that's in that situation, the folks that they're hiring may not necessarily always be the administrative side of things. They may find somebody that's better at selling their product than they are. And so that gives them the ability to scale and increase their revenue and scale up from a profitability standpoint, because maybe they're the technical person that's in the background that's able to deliver some of what needs to be done that helps the client overall. But they may find someone else who's a better relationship manager in terms of networking and building relationships and selling the product or service. And you have to recognize, where your strengths and weaknesses are, or sometimes you might not even categorize it so much as a weakness, as much as, hey, I'm selling a specific widget, and I've been on sales calls with Andrew. It's my company, but Andrew does a better job selling the widgets, right? So maybe Andrew should be out selling widgets and I should be in the office. So it really just depends on, what sort of skill set you have when you start working with other folks and bringing folks on your team and getting folks really, really to be able to be their best selves at work. Sometimes that means putting other folks out front and having them deliver whatever it is they can deliver.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, it has to be a team approach.
Right.
What I always say is, you should focus on what you do best and most profitably.
Right.
So that, it's your job to bring in the money.
Right.
Now, another place or another way that a lot of business owners leave money on the table is they don't price in the cost of their labor into the equation.
Right.
And, that's not a good thing, because at the end of the day, your business needs to be bringing in enough money such that you cover your costs,
right?
Plus you cover enough to pay yourself if you had to hire someone to do what you do.
Oh, absolutely.
And if beyond that,
oh, absolutely, Andrew. I mean, if you're in business and you can't pay yourself, what are you doing? You're paying expenses and you're covering you're covering the compensation for other folks, right? Other members of your team. You're paying vendors, you have those expenses. And at the end of the day, if you can't meet your expenses or create a lifestyle that's comfortable for you and your family, then maybe that's not the business for you, or maybe you were better off as an employee versus an entrepreneur. It's being in business for yourself and being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart, and it's not for folks who think that it's a very glamorous lifestyle. But because if you can't put the revenue with it, it'll very quickly become very unglamorous if you can't meet your own expenses.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's important to look at the numbers to sort of understand where you are, because the larger you are and the more you have going on, the easier it is for your numbers to get into a bad situation.
Right.
So it's definitely important to understand.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I see sometimes business folks, especially serial entrepreneurs sometimes, who may be running 2 or 3 separate types of operations. And you have 3 operations, you have 2 that are doing very well and very profitable, and you're using the revenue from that to support maybe a third business that is not doing well at all. And so my philosophy is that every business stands on its own and has to operate on its own revenue stream. Now, you may start a separate enterprise and fund it with other revenue, but at some point, each business needs to be able to stand on its own and be able to cover the expenses and have proper margins so that it is as a standalone is a profitable enterprise.
Correct. So, so there's a lot of things just in basic pricing and expenses that business owners need to know. One of the things that I've found, and you probably found too, is, one of the greatest fears of many business owners is numbers and analysis.
Right.
But, you can't really run your business well or as well as it could be run if you're not constantly looking at the numbers.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's definitely one of those areas that you have to get comfortable with, and you have to have a team of folks that understand that if that's an area that is a weakness for you, potentially, you have to have folks around you who do understand that and are able to teach you and mentor you and coach you to the point where you're comfortable with that part of the business. Because you're absolutely right. It's not a fun thing to think you have a profitable business and find out that it's not, because it's something that you should be keeping your eye on and cognizant of all the time, so whether or not a specific deal is going to be profitable. Is some decision that you made, is that going to put money on the table, generate revenue, or is it going to be a loss leader? And you just have to understand those kinds of things, and that's, for some folks, is an area where they need to grow in, but you can't shy away from it, because if you're going to be in business, you need to know your numbers, and you need to have some comfort that whatever price that you put out there is a price that's going to bring in a profit.
Yep. No, actually, that's the 3rd chapter in my book, Running Your Small Business Like a Pro.
Okay.
What's your greatest fear?
Absolutely.
And, if you don't know your numbers, you can't be proactive in terms of running your business. You're stuck being reactive because you don't know what's going on until something bad has happened.
Oh, for sure.
So, so definitely that's key. And a lot of people don't really understand that you can be profitable and run out of cash.
Right.
Be making money and run out of cash, but you could also have plenty of cash and be losing money.
Oh, for sure.
It's important to know where you stand.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things that happens. I think, you have companies that may be bidding on contracts, for example. It could be, whether it's a government contract or it's a contract with a private concern, but you potentially could be awarded a contract. It could potentially be a profitable contract. But to your point, Andrew, sometimes in terms of how your accounts receivables are managed, how your accounts receivables are collected in terms of how that contract is going to pay out, that sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you have a profitable contract, but because you don't have the cash flow to actually execute and deliver on that contract, that's when you need access to capital. You need lines of credit. You need working capital type loans to be able to pay your people, pay your expenses, so that you can manage how that cash flow is coming in based on those contracts. And at the end of the day, you need something to support that cash flow shortfall, even though you can see to the end of the contract and know this is really a profitable transaction for me, but I still need to meet payroll every week or every 2 weeks. And in order for me to do that, I need something to support that mechanism, just from a workflow and from a cash flow standpoint. And so sometimes if you don't have the ability to get the access to those capital needs to really support the contract, then sometimes it's a contract you really can't take on if you can't pay your people in the meantime. And I had a conversation with a gentleman at our golf outing yesterday that works in an area where they support small businesses to be able to deliver on those contracts. And the only way you can do that, if you don't have the cash yourself, is you have to borrow it. And that leads to another thing in terms of the overall financial management, and that's part of knowing your numbers, but it's also part of the process of being able to deliver to a potential lender the information that you need in order to gain the capital that you need to be able to support a contract that could very well be a good wealth building tool for you in terms of your business, in terms of your overall financial health of your family, and longevity with regard to family wealth, but all those things have to be managed in a way that makes sense. And folks have to also, I think, come to the understanding that when there's gaps in knowledge in terms of what it is, you have to be willing to hire and pay people to cover those gaps. And so, whether it's a consultant or whether it's a CPA or an attorney, you need a professional team that can help you really work through all the variables that come into play when you're a business owner.
Okay. You touched on so many valuable things. So I want to deconstruct it a little.
Sure.
But the last piece you did talk about is having the right team and the right knowledge.
Right.
And what I found is most business owners are not prepared to be able to do what they need to do to grow their business.
Right.
So that involves gaining knowledge, gaining access to people. So you got to continually learn.
Right.
Having people on your team, but also there's a lot of free resources.
Right.
Or low-cost resources that are available to small business owners that are just never utilized the way they should.
Right, absolutely.
The chamber that you work with has great resources that could help. That does help business owners, but could help a lot more.
Oh, absolutely. And you have, we're very fortunate in the state of New Jersey that we have a number of those types of resources that are basically covered by our taxes that we pay. And you have the New Jersey Business Assistance Corporation, for example, just a plethora of services that are provided that are, we like to say free, but to be honest with you, our tax dollars is what's paying for that. And so you want to be able to capitalize on those types of services. You have the small business, the development centers scattered around the state. They also do an excellent job with regard to business support services. We have support through the various funders that support the work of the chamber that allow us to do some of the work that we do with regard to business support services. And we have partnerships and relationships with folks that allow us to be able to augment those services. So it's There are opportunities out there, and there's information out there that allows people to get to this different types of information. Some of it is no cost, some of it is low cost. I mean, I see seminars and workshops for $25, and you're getting $20,000 worth of information if you execute on the information that you receive, and so it's as close to free as you're going to get with regard to some of the impactful information that you might receive from some of those services.
No, I mean, definitely. You mentioned the Small Business Development Center,
right?
And actually, I work with the Essex County,
Mm-hmm.
Rutgers Newark one.
Sure.
And, one of the best programs we have is a smart business plan workshop.
Right.
Which, 16 hours of training over 4 days for $75.
Right.
And
that's unheard of, right? I mean, you've been an advisor and a consultant and coach, and you're working in that space. Can you do 4 days worth of work for $75?
Right. And
there's no way you could do that.
And I teach 2 of the sessions.
Right.
I teach the accounting and I teach the finance session. So 4 hours of accounting, 4 hours of finance.
Right.
Like $75 isn't even an hour to spend with me.
Oh, absolutely.
So, you get so much out of those. So,
right.
I always tell people, to be successful in business, you got to be kind of cheap too. Or and so, you want to look for value in whatever you're investing your time. And, also you can have, advisors, but that doesn't absolve you from
absolutely
what
absolutely
they're doing and being able to manage them.
Absolutely.
So
you still need to learn enough to be able to be the decision maker with regard to how your businesses are being run.
Definitely. So one other thing you hit on that I just want to cover and bring, highlight is, you talked about when you're growing.
Right.
And, a lot of times you need capital.
Right.
Mostly all businesses who are growing, even though you're going to make more money, your cash flow is going in the negative direction.
Right.
And a lot of times people don't realize that and get into trouble.
Yeah.
So, if you're looking to grow, you need to think about that and get your financing before you even start down that road.
Oh, absolutely.
Because,
absolutely.
otherwise,
Oh yeah. And you have to be prepared for that. And part of that, in terms of the financial management of your business, is to already always have the information that you're going to need in order to obtain funding, right? You always need your tax returns for the last 2 or 3 years. You always need bank statements. You always need your corporate documents. You always need, profit and loss statements. You always need balance sheets, right? So if you have a financial management tool that allows you to spit out most of those things that you need at a moment's notice, and you're maintaining your tax filings and having your tax returns in order, and there's an opportunity that comes along that requires you to gain access to capital, you're not sitting around for 90 days during tax season waiting for your CPA to get your profit and loss statement or your balance sheet together. By the time that comes, your business opportunity is gone, right?
Yep.
So we have folks, one of the young ladies in our small business bond readiness program who helps to run and administer that always says that, if you stay ready, you never have to get ready. Right.
I like that.
And so, so a lot of times our folks are getting ready, and while they're getting ready, the opportunities are passing them by. So, that's part of the financial management of your business. You want to maintain the information that you need, should be at your fingertips. And if an opportunity comes along, you should be able to pull up your most recent 30 days information. Right now, we're in the middle of July, almost the end of July. Yep. You should be able to pull up your June 30th information in 2 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't have to wait until, September to produce your June information. So if you're managing your business on a daily basis and you're feeding into your financial management tool the information that you need to be feeding in, and that's me maintaining its current, then the only thing you might not be able to produce is, what did I do today? Right.
So no, that's a great point. But also, you shouldn't just be ready to produce it for financing.
Right.
Looking at it yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
On a regular basis and
Right.
understanding. So
yeah,
we've got a question here from Takira. So wanted to just any specific partnerships or collaborations to explore to increase revenue for her STEM company.
So I would say to Kira, I think I've spent some time with Takira with the women's the women's group that provides information. That's one of the other groups in the state that provide entrepreneurial training for women-owned businesses. We've done some joint presentations with them. And I would say that in terms of collaborations and partnerships for STEM, one of the big ones is to really be able to connect with the educators and be able to present your service to the different counties, the different school boards across the state, and to take advantage of those types of relationships to be able to get folks to understand what it is you do and what it is you offer, and be able to deliver on that. I think you'll be able to grow your business with the more people who are exposed to what you do and how you impact children with regard to their early stage development around STEM.
Excellent. So definitely thanks for the question there. We've also got a question from Dr. Michelle Scott. And she wants to know, first, thanks for what you're sharing, but how do you suggest pricing services from a nonprofit versus a for-profit organization?
Well, I would say that if you're a for-profit company and some of your clients happen to be nonprofits, I'm not sure if that's the nature of the question, but I think in terms of pricing, if you're a for-profit company and some of your clients happen to be nonprofit, there's still the avenue of your pricing needs to make sense for your business. If you're a for-profit company and you're pricing in a way that is detrimental to your own bottom line, then you're not going to be a profitable for-profit company. And if you're a nonprofit company providing services to for-profit organizations, I think those for-profit organizations are expecting to pay whatever the value is based on what the market will bear on the price that you're providing, or in the product or service you're providing. So I think that your price needs to make sense for your business model, and at the end of the day, you need to be able to pay yourself and pay your team. Otherwise, you're gonna low price yourself out of business.
Okay. Oh, great response. So now, time's always against us with the live, because everybody I have on here is so knowledgeable that we could talk for hours about, but people got to get to bed. I got to get dinner. You got to get back to your family. So
well, time does fly when you're having fun, Andrew.
Yeah, but we try and keep it to an hour, a few minutes after.
Right.
But what I would say is one thing I wanted to make sure that we covered, and we didn't get a chance to cover now. We don't have enough time to do it justice, but insurance.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
When you're buying insurance, what are some things that are important, and how can you possibly leave money on the table?
Oh, yeah.
But also private adjustment,
right.
Many people don't even know that exists
about public adjustment. Right. Yeah.
Actually,
So I spent some time as a public adjuster. One of the things that I can advise based on that experience is that if you're a property owner, you own a house, you own a commercial property, and you have a claim because there's some specific damage that has been done, that you want to have representation. Just like if you have a legal issue, you don't want to wander in court yourself trying to be the attorney. If you have a claim that needs to be filed to make your property restore it back to pre-claim condition, you want to engage the services of a public adjuster. So, like you said, we don't have enough time to go into a lot more than that, but that's my recommendation for sure.
Okay, but before that, you gave the answer before the question. So, what is a public adjuster?
Oh, sure.
And how does it work?
Yeah. Well, a public adjuster is basically an individual that is licensed by the state, and they're licensed to represent the consumer on the insurance claims when you have to file a claim. It is specifically for property like real estate, your home, and your business, your office. It is not for auto insurance. Public adjusters basically represent homeowners and business owners for claims that need to be filed for the property that they own, either commercially or personally, in terms of homes or businesses, office buildings, warehouses, whatever you might own on the commercial side.
And the best part is there's no cost unless they get you money.
Right.
They usually get you a lot more money than.
Well, usually you can do better with a public adjuster because they're working toward helping you get your property back to pre-claim condition, and they're representing you, and in their representation, they want to make you whole. So sometimes when you're dealing with a company outside of the public adjustment companies, the adjuster that works for the insurance company basically works for the insurance company.
Excellent. So now also, you in business, you need insurance,
right?
And different types of insurance, and insurance can be kind of confusing because one policy isn't always the same as a different policy.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
When you're thinking about buying insurance, what are some best practices?
Well, I can tell you if you're let's say if you're a property owner and you own real estate as rental property. So one of the things that you want to make sure that you're paying for that is part of your policy is loss of use. If it's not a rental property and it's a property that you live in, you also want to pay for and have as part of your policy loss of use. Because if you have something catastrophic happen, the roof blows off in a thunderstorm or hurricane, you have a fire or some event happens in that manner, and you have loss of use as part of your coverage, then at least you'll be able to live somewhere comparable, whether you're renting another house, to basically be able to live during the time frame that you're not going to be able to live in your own property. So it's really important. It's important to kind of analyze the different elements of the insurance. A lot of times people get insurance policies, don't really read it. And sometimes if they do read it, they don't thoroughly understand it. You have to sometimes get on the phone and ask questions to make sure that you understand the difference between, actual cash value for something that might be a loss that you might have a claim for in a policy versus a policy that might require you to be paid on a depreciated value of an asset that you might lose in a fire or some other damage. So those are just things that you have to do your homework. You have to take the time to review your policy, and if you're confused about it, seek out some assistance with regard to that. Sometimes your insurance agent will be able to help you with that. Sometimes you can call a public adjustment company and say, hey, I just got this policy and I don't know what I'm doing. Can you review my policy? Some of them will charge you a small fee to review your policy and make recommendations as to what should be in your policy in the event you have some sort of catastrophic event happen.
Yes, and it's important because you don't want to find out you're not covered for something after something happens, and that
it
happens a lot.
That happens all the time.
Yeah, especially with water damage.
So, oh yeah.
So I mean, I think, we've covered a lot of great stuff. There's so many things that you've learned over your career and different businesses and everything else that, you can't pour it all out in 1 hour.
Oh, sure.
But I think you did a good job.
Well, thank you, sir.
Today, so I appreciate that. One thing I want to do before we let you go,
right,
is since we covered so much stuff, it would be good to leave people with like the top 3 things they should think about and can start implementing based on what we talked about today. So a lot of times people can't remember more than 3 things.
Oh, sure.
Leave it
Well,
off.
I would say, if I had to narrow it down, one of the big things I would say is if you are a sole proprietor, single member LLC, small corporation, and you're running your entire operation yourself, that one of the best things that you can do for your business is to make a decision that you're going to scale to the point where you can grow your business and you can grow the revenues based on support that you can get from other folks in terms of how you build your team. And if you're not able to build your team by bringing folks on board, full time and having that kind of salary impact immediately, there are folks that offer fractional services. I have a friend that offers a fractional chief operations officer type services. We have folks who offer, that are members of the chamber, that offer other services that are virtual services that allow you to basically have some sort of operational support that allows you to basically scale your business as your business grows before you maybe bring someone on full time for administrative support. Maybe you have an administrative support service company that provides some level of support. But you have to start thinking about, how do I get myself to increase revenue, and how do I remove myself to the point where I'm not the vice president of everything and I'm not spending 100% of my time working in the business, but I'm spending enough time working on my business that I can actually grow and scale.
Okay. All right. So that's one.
That's a big one.
Okay, so that's a big one. So no, that's
a big one. But the other thing too, if I had to add a couple other things that I'm really big on financial management and really being able to understand your numbers and keep things close that you're going to need in order to grow and scale your business. You don't want to take a lot of time, like I mentioned earlier, having to try to piece things together. You want to have things at hand. Sometimes there are opportunities. There's even grant opportunities. We had a situation a couple of years ago during the pandemic that, one of the agencies in the state had money to support the payment for leases. And they were running into an obstacle where there were folks who had been leasing the space where their company's located for years, but they didn't have a lease. And so they missed out on an opportunity to have 6 months or whatever it was of grant money to cover their lease payments. And in a downturn in the economy, having free lease payments for a certain amount of time is putting revenue in your pocket, because it's an expense that would have been absorbed. But something as simple as a lease, a lack of having a lease, really put people in a situation where they were not eligible to receive those funds. So the financial management piece is very important. Having your documents in order is very important, and you have to do that if you want to be a successful business person.
Okay, so there you have it. Get help to scale.
Right.
Get the appropriate help, and make sure that you're prepared. You always got to look at your budget, and you got to look at your plan. But even if you're a single person, you should be planning to create an enterprise.
Absolutely.
What you want your org chart to be in the future.
Right.
And as you get to the appropriate revenue level, you can bring in the right people to, help generate more. So very critical.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't plan it, it doesn't happen.
Absolutely. It's like scheduling something like this, right? If it's not on my calendar, Andrew, it doesn't happen.
That's correct. So, so you got to schedule it. You got to have it part of your plan.
Right.
Financial management, knowing your numbers. I can't stress how important that is, and how it can help you. One, just understand how your business works and be proactive so that you can, be more successful, faster, and easier.
Right.
And then being prepared. Don't let things come and happen to you and not be ready with any response or what you need to kind of move things forward. So
absolutely. And one final point I'll make, Andrew, and I'm sure you know this, is that the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey serves to really mitigate a lot of the challenges and barriers our folks really face in the business community. And membership in the chamber is a great way to really access the resources, opportunities, and information that's out there, and really to help folks really get to a point where they can grow and scale their businesses. And sometimes it may be just a matter of introducing someone to the right person, like you were saying earlier. Talking to the right person sometimes is the difference between getting a contract and not.
Definitely. And what I have to say is, I've known John Harmon for many years. He's worked really hard, and every year the chamber gets better and stronger.
Right.
And I was excited to see when you had joined his team. So there's a lot of value.
Oh, absolutely.
One thing where I saw you recently was the expo held at Montclair.
Oh, absolutely.
Which was outstanding. I have clients who were there.
They're
right. Like this, I got business opportunities. I learned key things. I connect key people.
Oh, absolutely.
And, that's so important. So, we appreciate the work.
Absolutely.
Doing, and
we're stronger together, Andrew. That's for sure.
Yes, definitely. So that's cool. So I'm going to close things out. Hang on for a minute afterwards so we can chat. But let me just close things out. So once again, another great episode. Definitely always love to talk to Phil. I always learn something as well. Definitely the Chamber's website's here. It's also in the chat. You got a link to Phil's LinkedIn profile in the chat too. So I'm sure he'd be excited if you connected with him on LinkedIn. So don't hesitate to do that. And last and not least, next week, we've got another great episode. Our guest next week is Rick Delaretta. And he's a really great guy. He's the founder of Jazz for Peace. But we're going to talk about unlocking consistent results with systems and processes. So I look forward to talking to him about, how he developed these systems and processes and, how they work for him. And then, in return, how as a small business, you may be able to improve upon your systems and processes. So very excited about talking to him about that and look forward to having him as a guest next week. So at the end of the day, the more that you know, the faster and more successfully your business will grow.
Thank you for listening to Leadership Live at 8:05, Talking Small Business. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Leadership Live is one of the many valuable resources provided through the Small Business Pro University, empowering business owners to learn, profit, and grow. Find out more at sbpro.u.com.